The idea that men are expected to make the first move should be news to no one. Such ideas fill our media, giving us scripts that give us man the pursuer and woman the pursued. Romantic advice for women often encourages them to adopt fashion and habit that makes them a more noticeable object of desire, creating enough motivation in a man to take the action expected of him. It should be no surprise then that 77% of women aged 18 to 30 want to be approached more often. It should also be of no surprise that 50% of men haven't approached a woman in the last year, when 86% of men blame their singlehood on a lack of flirting skills. This leads to a dilemma in which men are forced to pursue women without actually knowing how, which often has them framed as a predator when things inevitably go wrong. This dilemma has led me to this series of essays on an attempted post-patriarchal reconstruction of pickup artistry. While each essay is written to stand on its own, together they constitute a full picture that is very important to see. So if you end up liking this essay, which is the fourth, then please consider starting at the beginning with the problem of creepy men. So in that last essay, I discussed the fundamental premise of pickup. I suck at talking to women, and so I want to learn how so that they are excited about the possibility of sex or romance with me. I then went into how pickup often goes wrong with its answer and just ends up boxing men into a lifestyle defined by manufactured need. This will be a theme I return to time and time again throughout this series of essays, but in this essay I want to start showing you how the romantic game of pursuer-pursued goes so wrong. So think about that. If we have romantic scripts that have man the pursuer and woman the pursued, it can very easily become man the predator and woman the victim if the attraction isn't mutual. Once that happens, misinterpretations of honest mistakes become more and more likely. We then become more and more likely to frame as villains men who haven't taken personal responsibility over their unattractiveness to women. You can see how there's a heavy responsibilizing of such men, making every problem they have their own responsibility to solve, often all by themselves. When they do take that responsibility, they are again framed as a villain for trying to get better with pickup, the only education that offers training wheels for getting better. The first issue with this is that sometimes bad pickup works, and sometimes good pickup fails because of the fact that each person and situation is unique. Pickup instructors will admit themselves that there is no perfect system. So if a good guy is given a bad strategy that works even once, he will have a lot of difficulty changing that strategy in the future. For example, a pickup coach once taught me that if you want to get girls, you have to be willing to text them back after rejection. I tried this, and sometimes it didn't work. But it also did work not once, but several times. So put that in context of what I said in the second essay about me trying to stay friends with women. At some earlier point, I was literally one of those guys who kept texting women after rejection to try to fuck. And I continued to do it until I matured enough to finally realize how disrespectful it could be. But notice that I said could be, because again, sometimes women were totally open to me being persistent by no other metric than that we went on a date or even hooked up after that persistence. Whether they wanted me to or were happy about it is kind of irrelevant because clearly it worked. And so that speaks to the very difficult problem of one woman's harassment being another woman's accepted efforts for sex. Unfortunately, which interpretation is which can sometimes depend on various factors for the same woman. And man the pursuer can only find out after the fact. But that's a second important issue, and one that Dr. Rachel O'Neill identified in her ethnography of the pickup community. Now, before I get into that though, if you like this video so far, please be sure to hit the like button and subscribe. I also have a Patreon that you can support the channel through. I offer things like monthly Q&As, early access to videos, and eventually I hope to start a book club through it. But I do intend to keep the vast majority of my content free on YouTube. So if you think this message is important, I would really appreciate you considering a subscription. So thank you so much for that. Now, getting into the video, Dr. O'Neill found that these men were so concerned about figuring out how to date that they reframed a woman as a technical problem rather than a moral entity, as a person. They were so concerned with how to get a result that they never asked if they should do some technique, even if it did get them a result. So with all that being said, what exactly should men learn? You can give them the love and respect women program, but that's what the nice guy does, and he's rightfully called out for gaslighting. I mean, he spends all this time deluding a woman into thinking he's her friend when he's secretly trying to get her to like him. Clearly, that isn't truly loving and respecting women. I get that. But my point is that there is something that men must do beyond the superficial veneer of love and respect in order to create attraction. This is especially true when genuine love and respect can be misinterpreted as predatory when it comes from a man a woman isn't interested in talking to, but feels she can't be honest with. For example, I once had a friend with benefits, but she decided to end things after a concussion in the middle of a master's degree literally made things too difficult to continue. The last thing she said was that she really loved talking to me and wanted to remain friends. In my mind, it seemed like the perfect situation to practice not being an asshole and to show her that I cared about her for more than sex. She was going through something difficult and I wanted to be there for her as her friend. A few months and a few friendly exchanges over text go by, and then she suddenly stops responding and leaves me on read. After a while, I text her again and asked if everything was okay. She said something to the effect that she was still dealing with a concussion and was having difficulty replying to other people, so please don't take it personally. A few more months go by without a word, so I text her again, and she sends me a huge paragraph, essentially accusing me of not getting the hint, of stalking behavior, and questioning how committed I was to positive masculinity. From her perspective, she had ended things months back when she cut off the friends with benefit situation, and I was supposed to know to stop talking to her, despite her saying, of course, that she wanted to stay friends. As I'm sure you can imagine, I was a bit shocked. From my perspective, you can see how strange this reaction probably seems. She said she loved talking to me and wanted to stay friends. We had friendly interactions in between, and she even said months after a concussion that she was still dealing with symptoms, and that's why she didn't respond to one of my texts. She had called out my commitment to positive masculinity, attacked me, surprised, offended that I would be concerned about her. It was precisely, ironically, that commitment to positive masculinity that had led me to reach out in the first place. And so maybe I really should have gotten the hint. But Jesus Christ, a person I was sleeping with had a concussion so bad that it ended our relationship and may even be endangering her career. So what kind of psychopath would I be if I didn't care enough to check up on her? So, as you may again imagine, I wonder if there ever even was a concussion in the first place. Right? Like, had she just used that as an excuse to break things off and not give like a harsh rejection? I have, like, again, to this day, I really have no idea. I literally have no idea. I haven't talked to her since that message where she freaked out on me. I know, however, I'm the type of person to take an undeniably clear rejection and move on with my life. But clearly she didn't. Clearly she gave me a very unclear rejection and then was upset when I continued trying to be friends. So, remember, big point I want you to get through all of that. She interpreted my attempt to care about her as predatory. Why is that? How is that possible? Obviously, her reasons could be different. I have no idea what they truly are. However, think about it this way. If you condition an entire gender to act dominant and assertive, and perhaps more importantly, to be seen as and expected to be dominant and assertive by others, then think about how that will influence that gender's acts of care. Firstly, it will likely be merely a feeling of care rather than a legitimate act of care. A lot of people, regardless of gender, think that simply feeling care towards someone will make their actions caring. Often, that just means you're justifying being a bit of an asshole or even enabling toxic behavior in that person. But at least, you feel the care, right? Anyway, secondly, your act of care may actually fall flat because you lacked the skill in that action. Unlike women, you likely don't have a lifetime of experience in that skill set. Most importantly, however, is that your act of care may be perceived as suspicious or manipulative because it defies what they have been taught to expect from you. And so regardless of how authentic my act of care was, the fact remains that she didn't perceive it that way, and for very good reason. My care doesn't exist in a vacuum, but in all the negative experiences she's had with and heard about men. With all that said then, consider how such experiences with understandably distrustful women influence men and their desire to be caring for women. Why care when your care is undesired? Punish men for being caring, punish men from being caring. And this shouldn't be surprising, but we all do this unintentionally, and that's actually my point. We all lack the necessary education to navigate this complex terrain, and so toxic narratives and strategies perpetuate harm to all genders. If we continue to condition men into pursuers and women into pursued, then we will continue to have situations where men are predatory and women are helpless victims, even if by misinterpretation. We don't want either of those things, obviously. And yet again, for all its failures, pickup actually offers something for men to do. But that's certainly not a justification for doing it, even if it can lead a man to more sex. For all its successes, pickup can only really offer strategies for men to win a toxic game rather than for recreating a positive game. So to understand how we can find a better practice for men, we need to first understand why pickup artists offer the practices they do, which means understanding their theories for why women choose the men they do. One criticism my essays have received is that I don't adequately address women who choose bad men. If you agree with that criticism, then I highly recommend you check out my essay, The Dead End Cosmology of Red Pill, because I do answer a lot there. However, I do want to return to that question because I think there are some important pieces of the puzzle I missed. We'll cover the importance of theory in the next essay and why women choose bad men in the 2 essays after that. However, what I'd like to leave us on is one of the most important points to remember about red pill and pickup artistry. In my personal experience, the pickup community has been one of the most supportive and motivating communities I have ever been a part of. When it comes to my dating issues, they have quite literally empathized with me and helped me more than my parents have. That's a problem. Dr. K has time and time again reminded us that red pillars and incels are really just after acceptance and support in a world they feel incapable of dealing with, while being expected to do so completely alone. Our solution to this problem cannot be to continue denying them support. So in reconstructing pickup artistry, we have to be aware of how the man as pursuer and woman as pursued game limits how we can empathize with men enough to give them the education they need. Even within this game, romance is seldom as simple as this in reality. Women are far from passive and are often chasing some sort of goal of their own. The difference is in how we understand what they're doing, how we understand their goals, and how we all tie that together into an often too simplistic narrative about what's going on. And so we'll begin to understand the consequences of that in the next essay. Until then, thank you so much for your time and attention. Please hit the like button and subscribe for more conversations on masculinity, psychological development, and the cultivation of a personal myth. Thanks again, and all the best to you on whatever journey you find yourself on.